My name is Satya Prabhakar, and I'm over here to talk about character design. So we'll try to do understanding character design in detail. This is going to be just a very short brief, but I'm hoping to cover up a good amount of details in this. So let's start right away. What we basically understand over here is what are characters, what is character design. Basically, what do we talk about when we talk about character design? Now, what we see is in our day-to-day lives, we see different kind of people, different forms of people, different forms of objects. You'll find different creatures altogether. If you look at it in terms of 3D, you do find different creatures. But then what you see in the movies nowadays, like you can say Green Lantern, for example, the image placed over here itself, you can see the He-Man is placed over here. Now the character is very specific. Now he is particularly described as one of the most powerful humans in that particular planet, in that particular race, Eternia for that matter. Now keeping all these things in mind, what are characters? Characters are peoples or characters that are created out of reality or fiction to suit the requirement of the script. Now in this case, when we talk suiting the requirement of the script, it is never that stories are real. It's never like stories are told in reality. Sometimes movies like Superman, He-Man, Spider-Man, all these things come with some sort of fiction involved, some sort of imagination, some way where people feel ki there are boundaries that we can reach beyond in our imagination. So that's where character description comes in. People want particular type of characters for that. They don't want every day-to-day life characters to to be able to show a particular form of action being performed. Like for example, in this case, He-Man is supposed to be an extremely strong guy, and he can create. He has extreme amount of strength, and he can show a lot of valor. He's very brave, and he defends Eternia, so to say. But then that is how you're slowly describing a character. But then he's more righteous, he's more honest, he's just, and he never lies and stuff like that. These are character descriptions. Basically how you explain characters, how you try to describe characters. So what are characters? These are the characters that we talk about generally. Now what is character description then in detail? An elaborate description of properties or features of a character, which I just said. For example, again, let's take another character, a comic character from any one of those DC comics or Marvel comics, for instance. Every character has to have a goal, a fixed goal in his heart. That okay, I will fight for justice. I'll fight against so and so crime. I'll fight against this. Yeah, I will uphold the honor of my clan, or however it may be. So what you're talking about over here is how do you describe that particular character you want to particularly picturize, or you want the audience to correlate to. You as a student will first try to understand it and try to jot down a few points about the character. Okay, this is how I want my character to be. This is what my description should be all about. This is how my character should look, and this is how my character should behave. Or maybe in the movie, this is what the script demands. Yeah, this is what the how do I put it? The director wants it like this. Sometimes it does come down to the point where the director says, okay, fine, I want the character to I want a very muscular kind of a character. I want a very strong character who cannot be defeated, and who faces a lot of problems in terms of the villain. The villain comes on, and there's a lot of fight going on. There's a lot of action scenes created because of that, because of his strength, because we want to exhibit his strength. Like you can see movies like Conan, where Arnold Schwarzenegger had nothing else but a huge body, and they wanted to exhibit that body. So they had to choose a character apt enough to play that role. They wanted to play Conan the Barbarian, so they wanted a barbaric kind of a face. Now with that barbaric kind of a face, they wanted a huge physique, which would give them a very strange kind of an approach, in the sense that okay, fine, he is larger than life, he's huge, and there's so much of power. So that's what character description is all about. Unless you describe the character to somebody, you will not be in a position to start imagining. The audience needs to start imagining how the character looks, or the producer, the director needs to imagine how the character looks based on the kind of script given. So that's how the character designer or character artist would generally describe a character, or start imagining a character based on the kind of descriptions given. We'll go into detail in terms of character. Now, what is character description basically? Based on the need or demand of the script, a character is chosen keeping the following in mind: height, weight, age, complexion. Now, why do I particularly say height, weight, age and complexion? Height, weight, age and complexion is generally said because you want to know at which face you want to shoot the movie, or at which level is the character being portrayed, at which you can say in which age group does he lie, what his physique should be. Like, for example, let's say there's this Tobey Maguire was acting in Spider-Man. The initial shot when they showed was that they showed him to be a very lean kind of a character. Now they wanted metamorphosis. They wanted to transform him from just being a lean character to a huge muscular, not necessarily huge, but then a muscular character who's going to portray the role of Spider-Man. Now they wanted to show the metamorphosis. They wanted to show the change. So the physique also is involved. There's a lot of physique also which is involved over here. As I say specifically over here, we have the height, weight, age and complexion. Now after height, weight, age and complexion, we also have physique. We also definitely concentrate on the kind of physique based on the needs or demands of the script. Now if the script demands that this guy needs to have a lean physique in the beginning, and where we want to show metamorphosis, where we want to show transformation, then he turns into this superhero after he gets bitten by a spider or some super spider or something like that. So that's the way Spider-Man came into being, right? So that's the way we'll talk about. I mean, then which race and where he lives. Now we need this because we need to know a little bit of the backstory of the character, whether we want to know how the character came into existence, how he was actually made, or where does he actually come from, what is his humble origin. This creates drama. This is why characters, I mean, it adds depth to the character. It adds more depth to the character in the sense that the person is more eager to understand how this character would turn out to be in the future. For example, the image shown over here is the image of a barbarian. Now we can say Conan the Barbarian for that matter. Now this is a retro kind of an image. Halaki, it's showing that okay, fine, this character is huge and he's got a very barbaric kind of a look on his face, and with the look of the kind of dress he's wearing, it shows that this is from the medieval era. It's not the recent times. Recent times people don't wear clothes like this. This is from way behind in the medieval era, where where gold, brass and leather was mostly used as ornamentation and decoration. This is more or less the kind of attire people would wear during those times. Background and current circumstances. Background and current circumstances of the character in this particular process, in the sense that suppose you chose a character. This character needs to be living in what, like way behind in the primitive ages, like 10,000 BC. The set was completely based on nature, mostly nature. So the backgrounds were all considered of that kind, and current circumstances at that time were so that okay, there was this ice age coming in, and then people were trying to migrate, people were running for food, and there was a lot of rush created. The kind of clothing they used to wear based on the kind of environment they used to live in definitely counted. So keeping all these things in mind, this is what character description is basically all about. Now, why is character description required? First of all, when we started off talking about character description and everything, we generally talked about simply describing characters, saying that okay, the character is supposed to look like this, he's supposed to look like that, and okay, this is what we need from a character, and this is how the character should look, and just the basic information that's being passed on. But when you talk about character description, why do you really need it? Why do you really require all this? We require this so that the right character be chosen to play the right role. For example, if you want to choose a huge man already for playing a very soft kind of a role, it just doesn't fit in. You need to have a lean kind of a character to play a soft role. You need to have a muscular character to play a role like something like Rambo. You can't expect a chocolate hero to come and play the role of a superhero. So there's a lot of difference. There's a lot of different. You have to be very particular when it comes to the kind of characters you choose. There has to be, the character should be very particularly to their role. So the next point is characters description is definitely required so that every character is unique. Now in any movie, if you have the same kind of characters that are being played, if you always have the same kind of characters that are being played, you will end up having the same kind of output. I mean, you will have the same kind of people, and it becomes very monotonous. You will not find the difference between one character to another. You will always want to have that difference. You will want to show to the audience that, okay, fine, if this is character A, this is character B, and then there has to be some sort of conflict created over there. If there's a villain, there's a hero. The hero has to have a much superior intellect. The villain would have they would show more brute strength, they will show more power, and they will show more desire to the dark side. Or generally the antagonist, the protagonist would generally, or the hero would generally show more liking towards honor, pride, dignity, etc., etc. So keeping all these things in mind, when you talk about character descriptions, you talk about all these kind of aspects. Now, a good character description helps in linking the character to the story. Now, when we say a good character description helps in linking the character to a story, what we mean to say is, suppose, I'll try to explain this thing through examples. We talk about movies like Superman or Spider-Man. Now, in general, Superman was a character described, but before it was described, there was some idea which led to that level of inception. Before anybody could conceive that kind of a character in their mind, they had to have faced something in life. So everything is based on the kind of reality that the person faces. Now, when you talk about a good character description, and when you want to link it properly to a story, suppose you have a story saying that, okay, there was this guy who had faced a lot of problems in life and who ended up trying to overcome those problems by becoming something which he couldn't be, something like Batman. Batman was a character which is more realistic compared to all the other characters, in the sense that it's doable. Characters like that can be doable, in the sense that I faced a lot of problems in life. Now I want to fight them back, and I want to come back to a position where people would not be able to question me in that form. But at the same time, I'm able to do justice without being hampered, without me being touched. I'm becoming untouchable here. I'm becoming too powerful here. This is the kind of script required. Now the character description for that particular script would be like, okay, in the initial stages, I want to show a camouflaged face, saying that, okay, I'm just a normal day-to-day kind of a guy who's a very rich businessman and who's just making money every day. But then in the back, what I really am is what the character. I mean, the mystery, the silence behind the entire scene. What really lies behind is what you describe the character to be. For example, in the case of Batman, what we want to describe in terms of character is, this character is very mysterious. This character is very silent. He never jokes. He never makes fun. But he is so serious, he knows what he is doing. And he's always 10 leaps ahead of you when it comes to thinking. He thinks 10 times ahead. So this is the kind of character description generally people have about Batman. Now, people know that on his split personality, on his other side, he's just Bruce Wayne. He's just this happy-go-lucky kind of a businessman, a big shot businessman who's inherited all the money from his father's business, and he's just flaunting away his money, having fun. But in reality, in his heart, he is fighting crime. He is fighting what he fears the most. He's fighting against everything that is bad. He's fighting to protect. He's this masked vigilante. This is the kind of character description people would generally want to have. Now, components of character design. When we talk about components of character design, we particularly start thinking how do you actually decide on what are the components of character design. Now, components include research, referencing, doodling, finding final line art of character based on all the referencing, researching, doodling done above, and then character sheeting. But before we go into all that, we need to understand all these things. What these are the basic components of character design. Why do we say these are the basic components of character design? Because in anything you do, for any character you want to generate or create, you will always end up doing research. That's the first thing you always end up doing, because you will say, okay, fine, I want a superhero, but what kind of a superhero do I want? Let me start thinking. Let's see, he should fly. Okay, fine, Superman flies, so big deal. I don't want somebody to fly. Okay, he should be able to run around, jump over bungalows, jump over buildings, and he should be able to jump over rooftops. He should be able to hang. He should be indestructible. You're having a lot of description over here, but what is the level of research done? In the sense, you start looking. Now, where would you start? Where would you start in terms of research over here? You'd start looking at different comics. You'll start looking at different physical structures of characters. Okay, you want an extremely huge looking kind of a character, then you'll start looking at characters who are, most comic strips who are huge. People catch on all these things from there. Why? You research on the kind of style they use. You research on the kind of costumes. You research on the kind of facial features of the character, or the kind of dressing he wears, or the kind of intellect the character has. But to be able to know the kind of intellect, you need to know the kind of environment he is going to be staying in. So there's a lot of research involved in terms of the environment as well. Now then, referencing. Based on the research that you've done, you'll do referencing. Referencing in the sense, okay, fine, I'll keep this as a reference. On the basis of this, I'm making this. On the basis of this kind of an environment, I'm trying to construct my own superficial environment. Now, there was this very unique form of creation or referencing, as you can say. Like there were movies like Avatar. I don't know how many of you guys must have seen that movie, but then Avatar was made on the basis of a lot of referencing done. I mean, there were artists who were sent to the Amazons. There were artists who were sent to rainforests, and they used to like take photos of anything and everything, and then they used to come back and they used to start drawing and working on it. Like even we tried that. There were times when we used to go to different kind of environments to take pictures of those particular places, because we wanted such kind of things in our 3D world. Now, keeping those things, we don't want to make them very realistic. Now, generally characters, environments that you decide on need not be very realistic. They can always be symbolic. They can be symbolic. They can be, you can make them look more or less like the real thing. But by looking at just that, one should get a very simple idea of what the entire the entire idea is all about. I mean, the entire what we are trying to explain to the audience, or what you are trying to get through to the audience. It should be symbolic, more or less. So that's where the referencing comes in handy. Like, you need to know that, okay, if this is a glass kept over here, this is how a glass generally looks. So how do I represent that in 3D, or how do I represent that in terms of art? The image placed on the screen in front of you at the moment is of a guy who is sitting on a bench, and he is having a gas mask on his head, and there's a small plant kept next to him, a green plant kept next to him. If you notice, the environment is less green as compared to the green plant. But then if you see that the green plant also has a mask on top of it. Now, a simple single line punch that you can give over here, a single punch line that you can give over here would be live and let live. A simple plant would give oxygen to the man, and man in turn gives carbon dioxide to the plant. So both of them survive. So it's a very simple kind of an explanation. But here, the kind of research done was that, okay, we needed a bench in a park sort of a thing, and we needed a simple bench over there, and we needed a little bit of grass here and there, and we wanted the trees to look very shabby, and we wanted to have a very vector kind of a feel. So keeping all the vector kind of a feel into picture, we keep it simple over here. These are very simple line art. This is a very simple form of art as you see it. Then the fine line art that you do, the final line art of the character based on the above. Now, with all the referencing that you do, before that you do something called doodling. Now, what is doodling? We'll come to that in our later slides, but then generally doodling is all about making rough sketches here and there, trying to just scribble onto the pages whatever ideas that you have on your mind. You start scribbling onto the page. You try to come with simple ideas, and you try to, and out of those ideas you start picking, okay, fine, this guy's ear is good, okay, this guy's nose looks better, maybe this guy's physique is good, okay, this guy's body language is okay. Let's try to merge everything and try to form some sort of a final line art. Let's try to finish that final line art, and once that line art is done, what you actually have done is created a final character on a pencil sketch. Now once that pencil sketch character is created, then you decide, okay, fine, let me finally put this in the form of final output, and let me give a different poses to him, or the same character, giving different poses to the same character. Now this particular process of giving different poses to the same character in different moods and different behaviors is called character sheeting. This is the final stage where you finally give a character design in terms of output. Creating characters, where to start? Like what we are doing over here is complete detail. I'll go step by step in terms of the points that were taken in our previous slide. So on the same basis, we go on saying creating characters, where to start? It's all about research, and research. Believe me, the more research you do, the more knowledge you gain, the better for you, because it's all about knowledge. It's all about the power is basically in the knowledge that you do. For example, if I was to tell you that I want a character from ancient Arabian times, I want a character who's more of a desert warrior, or maybe who's more of a fighting machine, and he's a mercenary. The first thing that will come to your mind would be the Scorpion King, where The Rock played the role of Scorpion King. But then he was a mercenary, and he was an ancient warrior. Now your research is limited to the point that, okay, fine, I've seen that movie, so okay, I know how the character should look. But suppose that movie was never made, and you were supposed to make a movie like that, then where would your research start? Your research would start, the first thing your research would start off with that, okay, fine, this guy is going to be placed in, he's from a desert area. So what's the kind of environment I'm going to be looking into? A desert. I'll be looking into a dry area, scarcity of water, plenty of land, but scarcity of shelter, scarcity of greenery. Need very strong survival techniques to survive in a place where there's a lot of scarcity like that. Okay, the kind of communication, or the kind of commuting process that he's going to have, he's either going to be on a horseback or on a camelback, mostly camelback, naturally, because it's a desert. Now, what else? His character, what kind of research would you do in terms of his appearance? The basic appearance you try to do in terms of, the kind of research you will do in terms of his appearance would be that he's not going to be a fair guy. You can't expect a person living in a desert to look very fair. You will have a tanning on him, or a slight tan. You want to show a brownish kind of a complexion, a wheatish complexion, let's say. Then you want to show that he's a warrior. Now if he's a warrior, he needs to have physique. He needs to have a good physique, not necessarily extremely huge, but then a good physique. So he's going to have a good physique because he's fed well. He's fed to fight. So he's fed well. He needs to have his weapons. Now the kind of weapons also would be particularly chosen. Now what kind of weapons would you give to this guy? He's not going to be carrying something very heavy. If he carries something very heavy, it's going to be like, okay, first of all, I'm starving because of thirst, I'm starving because of hunger, and I'm going to be fighting in a desert. You can't expect me to carry a sword weighing 20 kgs, man. Come on. So you'll end up having a guy wearing a very light kind of a dress, who's holding a very flimsy kind of a sword, which is easily maneuverable, very light, something, all his weapons would be quite light. Now since it's medieval, you're not going to have guns or anything like that. You definitely have weapons like spears and swords. Now the kind of clothing he wears, now this also counts. Most commonly, people generally, I've seen a lot of students generally end up doing sketches of desert warriors with a lot of metal. Nowadays it's become fashion. It's become the in thing now. Like people have a lot of metal. They have this they have these huge shoulder holsters, like huge shoulder pads, like baseball characters, but these are made out of metal. Like foosball, not exactly baseball, but then you've got big shoulder pads made out of metal. Then you've got a lot of metal armory and everything, and he's a warrior, right? So that's the kind of metal armory that people generally picturize. But come on, here's the reality. He's in a desert. That metal is going to burn him. It's going to be hot. So he'd probably wear something very light to keep him more agile, to keep him, moving fast. So the kind of clothes he'd be wearing would be mostly cotton, white, so that it reflects all the heat. And then he's going to be having and if he's not wearing that much of white, he'll probably not be wearing as much of clothes as he'll be wearing as minimum clothes as possible. Why? Because okay, fine, he's going to be protected with just a shawl sort of a thing, or maybe a cloth or a shroud to cover him off from the harshness of the sun. But other than that, he wants to travel light. So there will be less of metal, maybe medium amount of leather or something like that. Maybe the shoes would be more flat. You're not going to be wearing heels in a desert, so you're going to have flat shoes. So there's going to be a lot of flat shoes. There's going to be a lot of leather involved over there. Sandals, more or less, so that your feet would be kept dry and you won't suffocate. So these are the kind of things that you generally imagine, or you do research on such kind of things. You'd actually go to, like, suppose I was to create a desert warrior in India, I'd probably go to Rajasthan. I'd probably go to see the kind of dressing people wear, see the kind of faces they have. You don't have faces which are, very clean or something like that. You'll always have these wrinkles coming off their eyes. Why? Because they've been facing so much of sandstorms, they've been facing so much of adverse conditions, that these people, they'll tend to have those wrinkles as a natural form. It's like, it's evolution, it's their habitat. So they have accustomed themselves to that. Their eyes are sharp. In spite of all the dust they go through, you'll never find their eyes spoiled. And the kind of food they eat over there, the kind of food they eat definitely counts. Now, over here, when we talk about food, we talk about the kind of vegetation that is available in that particular area. Based on the vegetation, that helps you in researching the kind of physique the character would have. Now, if you were to eat a lot of beef, if you were to eat a lot of meat, those characters are more barbaric and they will be obviously more huge, because there's a lot of protein content involved. But in a place where there's so much of scarcity of vegetation and everything like that, they'd be eating rare. I mean, they'll be eating less as compared, or maybe they'll be eating what is available, roots, they'll be eating plants, they'll be eating cacti, they'll be eating all sorts of stuff. Now these things cut down on muscle mass, but then they give you all that required stamina, so you'll find people more lean. Now, if anybody has seen movies like, The Gods Must Be Crazy, you have these Kalahari tribes, the Kalahari Desert. The tribes from the Kalahari Desert, they're generally lean and muscular and very, very lean. But then the Bushmen really know how to survive in their environment. So they eat out of roots, they don't have water, they survive without water for maybe weeks. But then they know how to get their water early in the morning. The dewdrops, they collect the dewdrops to make water. They collect roots, they dig out roots to make water. They'll squeeze out the cacti to get water from them. There are many ways in which people do research in that. So this is the kind of research you are supposed to do. That is how research is done. Now, the same thing goes, like, how do you do all this research? Simple. Just link the character description to the real life observations that you make. Whatever character description you do, all you need to do is just link it to the real life description, real life events that happen. Like, as I said, if you go and research in places like the Thar Desert, or you see the people, like how they live, what they survive on, this is the kind of information or input that you need to be able to create a character in that particular area for yourself. So that's how it goes. Now, we talk about essentials of research. Now, what are the essentials of research? Now, research should have sense, common sense for that matter. Should have sense in the sense that you just can't have, there's this character who's, as I said earlier, a desert warrior. You can't expect him to wear metal. You can't expect him to wear a full black suit, full black leather cover suit like a biker and stuff like that. You can't expect him to wear like that, wear such kind of clothes 24/7. You won't be able to wear those clothes 24/7. Come on, let's talk sense. You must see what kind of characters, what kind of people, how they live in that kind of an area. You are expecting to make a character who is just out of place if you're giving him black clothes, and if you're giving him tight jeans, and you're giving him all sorts of weird looking, how do we put it, if you're giving him all sorts of props, adding on to him, so that it becomes more bulky, the guy is not going to survive. He's not going to, I mean, his stamina is limited. Any human stamina is limited. You can't expect him to be a superhero that way. So you have to make sense. There has to be logic. Should have logic. Your research should definitely have logic, because you need to be logically sound. You need to know, okay, fine, if I am talking about characters who are being designed, or I'm picturizing characters from this particular era, then this character logically will have only this limited resource. He is not going to go beyond that. He is not going to have laser guns over there in the desert. It doesn't make sense. Now, if you want to show, like, beyond, like after World War III, you want to imagine that, okay, there's this World War III going on. Okay, fine. I want an environment where, like Terminator, like you've got people coming in from a mechanized process. There you have all the land has been destroyed, all the civilizations have been destroyed, all the vegetation's gone. Now what do you survive on? You survive on seafood. You survive on seafood because that's the only, water is the only damn thing remaining. You survive on seafood. You try to search for sand, you try to search for soil, you try to search for vegetation, and you're not getting it. You still survive on seafood. A good example is Waterworld. Now how did they bring in the logic? The logic behind the entire process was, we needed a person to survive on water, nothing but water, and other than that, we needed logically to say that at that time the most costliest thing is not money. Money is not precious anymore. What was more precious was land. They needed land. So they chose land or pieces of land to be a form of currency, and that's what they played in, that's what they used in Waterworld. They used sand as a currency. So weird to say, but then logical enough, because when the whole world is drowned, when the character was taken down into when the character went underwater as a mutated form, you see the Eiffel Tower, you see the Statue of Liberty that's drowned, and everything is underwater, and the water levels are so high that everything is just underwater. Now the only civilization that you could see was underwater. Now underwater everything is gone. So the only people surviving on top needed some source to trade or to survive. The only source was sand. So that's the way the logic connects. Now there has to be logic. There has to be logic, without which people would generally say, okay, fine. People just go to watch movies and they come out of the theater and it's just it doesn't make sense. I mean, okay, the movie was good, but then it doesn't make sense. I mean, you don't see that happening in day-to-day life. Now, when you add good logic into your research, you generally tend to come out with characters which are more logical, which are more related to the day-to-day lives, which are more correlated. A person will tend to correlate himself to the character. Now, how many of you guys would end up going to a theater watching Spider-Man and Superman and saying that, okay, fine, I'd love to be something like him one day? You can't, because these are superhumans. These are supernatural, imaginary. But if somebody says, okay, I'd like to be something like Batman, it's still doable, in the sense that what you need: wealth, you need technique, you need martial arts, and you need the guts to survive. That's it. And it's still a normal human being. He bleeds, he gets hurt, he gets beaten, and he gets defeated at times, and he survives, he fights back. That's the way characters are generally portrayed. That's more logical form. That's a more logical form, how you correlate. Now, essentials of research also involves that the research should be based on real life examples or habitat. Real life examples of habitat, again, is the same thing follows. I mean, you need to have real life examples over here. You need to particularly understand how these characters are living, or in what kind of an environment they are living. Those environments should probably be more realistic, or maybe more correlated to the kind of environment you want to portray the character to live. This is a very basic form of understanding. So then referencing comes in the same form. Now after a lot of referencing done, you go into the different kind of poses that people make. Then comes doodling. Doodling is where you do a lot of sketches, as I had said earlier. You do a lot of sketches over here. Now doodling is a random rough sketching done to get the understanding of basic shapes. Now this is how doodling helps. Like, you know, you just do a rough sketch first, and then you do you start getting a fairer version of it, and then finally you give the final sketch. Now after that you do fine line art. When you're doing fine line art, you talk about the final art, and then you do the shading on top of it. So the final line art is when all the rough lines are erased and only those lines that are used for final output are shown. And once the final line art is done, shading and coloring is done. Now this is an example of final line art. Like, you've got a rough shade of Superman over here, and then you've got the final work done. Similarly, you've got a character sheeting process. Now after all this is done, you're showing different poses of the character. Now this is what character sheeting is basically all about. A character sheeting is done so that the production artist gets acquainted to the character in various in his various moods or poses. Now here are some examples of character sheeting. Character sheeting should, or the sheet should be showing body language and expressions of the character. Here's another example of this is what I've been trying to say. A Viking warrior, generally Viking warrior having big arms, big shoulder pads and stuff like that. Now character sheeting should, this is again a character sheeting showing different emotions and expressions of the character over here. Basic conclusion that you need to understand in all this is characters may be presented by means of description through their acting, speech or thought. A good character design always helps to make a good animated movie. Research is the key to any good character design or more. So this is Prabhakar signing off, and see you next time.